I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Music Editor David Klotz. David, congratulations are in order. Not one, not two, but three Emmy nominations for sound editing. I was going to say it's a little greedy, but I just think you deserve it. And I just want to know how excited you are that you just got three, the triple crown to this year.
Yeah, I am thrilled, and it's funny. The morning that they made the announcement, I went and I was reading it, and I'm like, oh, great, Stranger Things again, lovely. And then I saw the next one, and then I was like, oh my God, three. And yeah, it never gets old. It's very exciting.
It's good to hear that it never gets old because you have scored a staggering 22 Emmy nominations over your career to date, and you're still just such a young fella. So you've got plenty more decades to go. And
Thanks.
eight wins for Game of Thrones, American Horror Story, and Stranger Things. Look, I don't want to I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I also don't want to minimize. That is such an achievement. And does it ever occur to you that you've done so well in your career today when it comes to awards, and that's not everyone can say that. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I feel grateful. I feel I feel lucky that I've had the opportunities I've had to work on such incredible shows, which with such incredible sound teams. And that's kind of been, the best part of the whole process for me, is being able to work with all these incredibly talented people as a team. I feel like, I'm lucky, I'm grateful, and it's been incredibly challenging many times over the years, but very grateful that I've had those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine if you don't get the reward unless you're putting in the work. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little later. But I want to talk us through, talk the audience through your role, because a lot of us understand, obviously, the music supervisor, the composer, the sound editing team, the sound mixing team, the re-recording artists. So where do you fit in as music editor in those teams?
Yeah, so as a music editor, it kind of the roles sort of flow to various different skill sets depending on the project. But essentially, I'm the person putting the music into the show. That's sort of like the one easy way to describe what I'm doing. And what goes along with that often is I'm working with the composer. We sort of sit down at the beginning of a project and decide where music's going to go into the movie or the show, where it's going to start and where it's going to stop. I create a set of blueprints that sort of everyone on the project uses, called spotting notes. The composer writes the music, delivers the music. We have scoring sessions and all that fun stuff. And then we put the music into the show. And that's sort of where the fun part begins, because nothing ever stays the same anymore. Picture constantly is changing. Visual effects are constantly messing up scenes. And I have to continually adjust the music to make it work, which can be challenging because we've spent all this money scoring with this beautiful orchestra, and then they chop the scene in half, and you got to figure out, how can I make the music still work in the scene, but at the same time still have the music have some integrity, so it's still a piece of music that works and sounds good. So that's the one of the biggest challenges I think I face as a music editor. And then that's kind of the big picture.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. I think a lot of people probably don't quite get it. They would just assume the composer composes, and he or she just says, all right, that's where it's going to go. And the music supervisor finds a really amazing tune, like from Kate Bush, and puts it in that scene, and we're all good. That's exactly not how it happens. And I can only imagine the way that these organically change and progress over post-production. You must go crazy that you have to keep changing things constantly to fit what the creative team's vision is.
Yeah, there's a lot of push and pull with especially with music and sound too, trying to figure out, this score cue is going to work here, then sound has to come out, and there's a lot of reworking things that we thought, this is going to be the perfect piece of music, and then when we finally get to the final mix, we realize, you know what, it's actually getting in the way of what we're trying to do sound wise or picture wise or even story wise. That often comes onto my plate too, is like, you know what, we thought this cue that the composer wrote was working. Now it's not doing what we wanted it to do. So what can we do from there? And that's a lot of times where I'm trying to reshape the cue, or if it's totally not going to work, then I'll just go into our library and find something that maybe we used in season 2, bring all those tracks in. The great thing about working today as a music editor is with technology, we're able to sort of move around giant multi-track sessions easily within our computers and our Pro Tools sessions. I have all these stems. I have everything split out from, every instrument in a way. So I can almost kind of recompose the cue at the last minute with like on Stranger Things, I'll be sitting there with the Duffer Brothers and where it's like 11 o'clock and we got to finish this mix. And we're just trying to figure out how I can make this cue work and shape it so it fits the scene better.
Yeah.
It's it can be fun and stressful all at the same time.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm sure it's fun, but it also sounds really complicated. And yeah, it blows my mind the amount of moving parts that you're constantly having to deal with. So let's go into a bit more detail if we could. On Stranger Things, the piggyback, that's just not a regular episode. Like, it's a cinematic experience. And I mean, Master of Puppets and all that stuff. When it comes to iconic pop culture milestones, like when that came out, it's like the whole world stopped to watch it. And there's so much music in that 2.5-hour blockbuster movie. So talk me through, what was the absolute highlight of your work on the Stranger Things finale?
That's a tough one because there were so many big moments in that. The Kate Bush song that we had orchestrally arranged for the end was wonderful. I think for me personally, I loved in that episode the Metallica song, Master of Puppets, because I found out before we had finished the show, I found out a year before that they were going to use that song, and we got the track. Metallica sent us their tracks of all the songs, and I put together an edit for them to use while they're filming on set. And it was like I cut the song down to maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and they filmed all the scenes to that. By the time we got through editorial and picture and visual effects and everything, I think it got trimmed down a little bit more. But one of the challenges that we went through is the Duffer Brothers wanted the song to sound like, that it was Eddie that started playing the guitar when he's on the trailer. So he's playing the guitar, and I had cut the original guitar track along with him playing, but it sounded so studio produced. It just sounded like a record right out of the gate. So we talked to everybody in post-production about getting a guitar player to come in, and we actually got this kid who's the bass player's son, I forget his name, Ty, who came in and just nailed played. He was supposed to just play the intro so that we could start with him playing the guitar track, and then we would crossfade into the record. But he played through the whole song and played every part and every solo perfectly.
Wow.
We were like, oh my God, I wish we could use this. But it wouldn't be a Metallica song if we did that. So but that's how we started out. We started out with his lead guitar playing, and then we slowly sort of morphed in all the other instruments and from the original song, and then kind of crossfaded in together. And I think it was really rewarding to see all that come together, because we added like guitar feedback and amp noise and all these things to make it feel like this real moment that suddenly becomes this sort of magical montage. And it was fun to work on.
I didn't actually know that. And I remember feeling, obviously I was so swept up in the emotion. I love the Eddie character so much. And when he's saving the world, can you imagine how it just wouldn't have worked if you just would have had a needle drop and just had the song play on a CD or whatever, and then I'm being facetious, but you know what I mean? Like that's where you can really make a difference, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And I have to give credit to the Duffer Brothers, because they really understand how music should work in a show, in a story, and they just go the whole way with it in every respect, in every scene, everything. There's just like there's always a reason why they're making these music choices, and they're important, and they're part of the story, and they move things forward, and all the things they want to try are so epic. Like all the remixes of the, you know, the Kate Bush song and everything
Yeah.
were just integral to the story and kind of transcended the show in a major way.
Yeah, actually, it reminds me. I mean, it's really helpful when you're working with creatives who understand music and put it on, you know, have it as a priority. So existentially, how does music in all its forms and how it's deployed in film and TV, how does it enhance or amplify storytelling in your mind?
Well, I think God, well, you know, it's sort of like adding another storytelling level to the scene. It's like you're watching a scene with these characters, and they're telling a story. There's always a point where what the writers and the directors, they're trying to tell you what they're trying to move things forward, and using underscore in the right way, just coming in at the right moment, can really emphasize like so much emotion and character development and everything, just in the most, even the most subtle use of like a tiny score cue creeping in at the right moment can add so much power to the story.
Yeah, I agree. When I often interview composers, and it's my favorite thing to do because I'm so obsessed with film and TV music ever since I was a child. And they often explain, you know, and it's not just composers, which I know you have a background in. It's the supervisors, again, something that you know about. You're all master manipulators in the best possible way, because we sometimes need to be guided through a scene, and music, there's nothing else that does that right here. And so that's super important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And again, credit to the Duffer Brothers. If they just know that music can do that, and if a scene just needs that little extra help, they just know exactly what music can do. Like this line is important. This actor kind of blew through this line. We really need to help it out, and sort of music can come in and save the day sometimes. Not just by emphasizing a line or a moment, but sometimes, you know, I used to joke when I would talk to people interested in music editing. I talked at a class at, I think, UCLA one time, and I was saying that it's like, you know, they spend millions of dollars shooting these scenes, and then you can come in and just, as a music editor, just throw in a song and into the scene, and then within 1 second completely change the tone, the meaning, and the story, and with just music. And it's just it has this great power that I enjoy wielding sometimes on the projects I work on.
And then, of course, what is so meta and cool is that in Stranger Things, it's, you know, for Will and for Max, music is actually saving their lives. And so I just love that. Love it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
So let's move on, because you know, you have 2 other projects as well that you're nominated for. Which, yeah, I know it's it's such a special year for you. So on Dahmer, you've got a lot of experience working on Ryan Murphy Productions, and I speak to plenty of creatives who work with him and his team, and they all love it. So I'm curious, what's challenging for you after all these years of working with him and his team to work on Dahmer, particularly God of Forgiveness, the episode that you submitted?
So Dahmer was actually a very different experience for me, not only in general as a music editor, but also as a as what I normally my normal workflow with Ryan Murphy is, because this was an interesting situation where they hired Nick Cave and Warren Ellis to compose the music, and their score is incredible. And you know, they came on to the show and did a ton of work before I was even hired. So the interesting workflow with that is with whatever schedule situation that they had, I think they were going on tour, or Nick had to go on tour, they'd recorded this this library of score and delivered it to editorial, and started, you know, they started using that in the show, and we're kind of repurposing the score into other episodes. And then I was sort of brought on as we got deeper into post-production to sort of help with that process, mostly by cleaning up a lot of the because the editors were just skillfully like throwing the music around in different places, but it needed sort of like a sort of another guided hand to make sure that it was still playing musically and not just just kind of maybe out of time or out of sync or stuff like that. So it was sort of like a interesting process where I was not involved from the beginning, and I didn't really have, I didn't see the scoring process or the delivery process. So it was sort of another interesting kind of workflow that I normally don't do. So
yeah,
I'm glad to still be recognized for it with the sound team.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really great that the Emmys or the TV Academy allows for quite a few people within the team to be recognized, because it is really such a team effort. Obviously, the supervising sound editor, it's his or her team, but you're all working together so closely, and you really can't do one without the other. That's my understanding of how it works over all these years. Yeah, that brings me to House of the Dragon. Is it true that you were working remotely while most of the production was in the UK?
Yeah, we did. We worked entirely. I was in Los Angeles with the composer. Ramin Javadi was here. I think we were the only two in LA. And it was gosh, it was like that almost all of last year. I was kind of had to be up early for something. That was every other day, a spotting session at 8 a.m. Like this on Zoom or whatever whatever application we were using. It's funny because when we started out, we were like, surely we can't do the whole thing like this. And Miguel, our producer, was intent on at some point coming out to LA to sit in the room with Ramin, but just with the schedules, and they had to do reshoots, it sort of never worked out. But once we got through spotting sessions, and Ramin would score, and then we'd have score preview sessions in the sort of same context where I was mixing all of Ramin's score onto movies, which we would watch, QuickTime movies, which we'd put up and watch remotely. And then they would give us notes, and Ramin would go and adjust it. But once we got through the first episode and they did the mix in London and everyone was happy, it sort of felt like, oh, you know what, this is going to work, no problem. And still haven't met any of the sound crew or people. That's almost wild. everybody I worked with.
That is so wild that in this day, and I mean, I think the pandemic, for all its horrors, one silver lining is that many of us have been able to work in this way effectively. And the fact that you and Ramin Javadi were able to create just the most amazing soundscape together, along with the whole team over in the UK, is so impressive. And that season finale, which is the episode that's been submitted with the dragons, and that final shot of Queen Rhaenyra, that's seared into my retina forever. And so there's a lot there.
Ramin's score for that is
it's
gorgeous, so good.
I could listen to it. I just love his music. I mean, I just did a Game of Thrones rewatch, and it reminded me of the work that he did on that show. I have a final question for you, David, and it's a little bit technical and inside baseball, but I've always wondered why the music editor, so to speak, using that title, is part of the sound editing team and not the sound mixing team. Why is that? I always, back in the day, thought it would have been the mixers.
Interesting. I guess there's probably with this day and age, it's hard to tell because we've all the lines have been blurred. Mixers are editing and editors are mixing, and there's just so much of that happening today that we're all in the same union. But I think with technology now, I have to do a bit of mixing and mixers have to do a bit of editing, and that's kind of like where we've gotten to. But I think, traditionally, if you go back, past 20, 30 years ago, we were just moving the music and that was it. There was no processing involved. So I think that's where that comes from.
That makes sense. I think it's a vestige from a bygone era, but it still kind of makes sense, I suppose. I mean, the Oscars have combined mixing and editing into one category. The Emmys
Yeah.
aren't doing that. The Emmys are happy to have plenty of categories to recognize everybody in different ways.
Yeah,
And that's a
that's
good
great.
thing. That means
More awards to go around.
more awards to go around, and there's nothing.
I would get these nominations up 22.
I mean, listen, if you just was one person in the sound team, then you're going to struggle. That's going to go to the supervising sound editor. So I'm super thrilled for you. You should be as well.
Thank you.
I don't know when the red carpet and the awards are happening, but hopefully it'll be soon, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you for your time today, David. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was great talking to you.